This is part 2 of this second session for week 3. I know this sounds crazy, but students took notes in session 1 on the different types of pronouns for indefinite, or not indefinite, interrogative, demonstrative, reflexive, and intensive. And so for the second half of class, we actually practiced our strategies in determining the right answer. And so the first part of it dealt with possessives, and we have said that when we use possessives in pronouns that there are no apostrophes. And so our strategy, if we're reading a sentence, we're writing a sentence, and we're not sure whether we need an apostrophe or not, we should break the word into the two words of the contraction and read it. Why would anybody want to study "you are garbage"? And obviously that's not the correct answer. And so the correct answer would be your, Y-O-U-R. And it is a possessive, and so we always want to think about, well, what's it showing possession of? It's showing possession of the garbage. The next one we'd look at, it's an odd fact. If we're not sure, we would break it into it is an odd fact, but archaeologists are able to learn a lot about a society from the rubbish it leaves behind. So that makes sense. So we want the contraction form. We could also check and say that it's as a possessive cannot own an, and so that can't be the right answer. In fact, you're probably not aware. So I would break this into you are probably not aware, and that makes sense. So I want the contraction form. When we look at a contraction, we're really looking at a noun and a verb, a subject and a verb put together into one word. We're not talking about possession of probably, owning probably. It's you are not aware. Recently, however, some scholars have turned their attention. I would break this into two words. They are. Recently, however, some scholars have turned they are attention. That is not correct. I want the possessive form, and so if I believe it's the possessive form, I should be able to tell what is it showing ownership or possession of. They own their own attention, their attention. And the last one, they're working. They are working or their possession working. They are working on a new field called garbology. And so they are the contraction form. I've got my subject and my verb. They are working. Now, we talked about in class the fact that this probably seemed a little bit of a waste of time. Why are we learning this? We knew this already, and I would agree 100% on that. The reason that we are learning this or reviewing this is because I am still having students who in their journals are misusing the your and the its and the its. So what we've talked about is just that some of our writing habits are just bad habits, and we know the right answer, and it's just a matter of us taking the time to go back and proofread and make the corrections that are supposed to be there. So the next type of pronoun we talked about were reflexive and intensive, and they have you have notes on the other paper in your binder for Grammar Bits 13. And so we talked about the singular, myself, yourself, himself, herself, oops, and itself, and then the plural, ourselves, yourselves, and themselves. And so what we're really looking at in here is, do we want, are we talking about an intensive pronoun or a reflexive? And our key memory trick is that reflexive is required and intensive is not. So if we find the reflexive intensive pronoun here, it's himself, and we read the sentence without it. During the 1920s, Harry Houdini labeled the most daring escape artist in the world. We would definitely need the word himself in that sentence, so it is reflexive. His name, if I cross out itself, his name makes people think of magic. That sounds okay. The meaning is the same. It's just there to show a little more emphasis, but it's not necessarily required. We would call that pronoun intensive. We can take it out. In one famous trick, Houdini freed from a tank that was filled. When we take that pronoun out, it does not make sense, and so we need to keep it in there. It's required It's reflexive. He also called the handcuff king. If we take himself out of there, that sentence actually does make sense. He called the handcuff king grammatically, but it changes the meaning. That makes it sound like he picked up the phone and called him, and that's not what it's saying. It's saying that he called himself the handcuff king, and so that is a required pronoun. The police officers themselves were amazed. If we take out themselves, the police officers were amazed. We do not need the pronoun there. It's intensive. It is not required to make the sentence make sense. Some people convinced that Houdini really had mysterious powers. Without the pronoun themselves, the sentence doesn't make sense, so it is required and it is reflexive. The magician said that wasn't true. We do not need himself, so that would be considered an intensive pronoun. He said people could develop these skills. If we take themselves out, that sentence still makes sense, and the meaning hasn't changed, so it is not required, it is intensive. Still, we probably couldn't become Houdinis even if we taught his secrets. Now, this one is another one of those where it sounds like it makes sense grammatically, but it changes the meaning. It sounds like we're teaching other people his secrets, when really it means we're teaching ourselves the secrets. So, the meaning changed if we got rid of it, so we can't get rid of it. It's required, so the pronoun is reflexive. And then the last one, even today's professional magicians don't try Houdini's dangerous escapes. It is not needed, so we call that an intensive pronoun. And we did talk about some examples in class about, why we use them. Why would we use an intensive pronoun if it's not necessary? So we've had that discussion before. So the next part we're looking at is our demonstratives and our interrogatives. And we had a strategy for who and whom. Whenever we're not sure about whether to use who or whom, we substitute he and him. And so our sentence would read, did you get the book from he or did you get the book from him? And the correct answer there is him, so the correct pronoun is whom. For these demonstratives, we said we have to find the antecedent. What is this or these referring to? It's referring to the pictures. And if pictures is plural, then these has to be plural. Again, the antecedent. One photograph shows that stone statues on Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean. That or those look like ancient guardians of the land. It's referring to statues. Statues is plural, so I want those because those refers to a plural pronoun or plural noun. That or those are the cylinder-shaped stones that rest on some of the statue's head like hats. We're referring to the stones. Stones are plural, so we need to use that as our pronoun. Who or whom carved these 15-foot tall human busts? So we would substitute he for who, him for whom, and read the sentence. He carved these 15-foot tall human busts, or him carved? And we would definitely say the right answer is he. We'll get into it in a couple of weeks when we come back from spring break about what's the actual job that who is doing in the sentence. But for right now, I think just the substitution method is all I'm really worried about you learning and understanding and being able to apply when you're writing. Okay. Who or whom would spend the time and energy needed to create them? We substitute he and him and we read the sentence. He would spend the time or him would spend the time, and the right answer is he, so the right pronoun is who. Here we're not really looking at he or him. We've got one of those contractions again, so our strategy was to break it into two different words, who is. We also thought about if he can be substituted for who and him for whom, what's the possessive form that would go with that? And that would be his. So we could say, his was the face depicted, or who is was the face depicted. And it's very obvious that we already have a verb, so we don't need another one. If I wanted to show what's the ownership of his is owning a face. So if we're asking it as a question, an unknown, we'd say whose face. Who or whom do the statues honor? He or him? Do the statues honor he, or do the statues honor him? The correct answer is him, so the correct pronoun is whom. Now we're looking at two different ones, whom and what. And so we talked about the difference between whom and what. Whom refers to a person. What refers to a thing or maybe a situation. So in looking at whom or what caused the sculptors to abandon their work and leave many statues unfinished, we're referring more to a situation or an unknown. We don't really know, so we can't necessarily say it's a person either. So the right answer there would be what. And then our last one, for a demonstrative pronoun, we have to find our antecedent. This or these are some of the questions that have yet to be answered about the mysterious statues. It's referring to the questions. Questions is plural, and so we want these. So this is just a quick little run through, just applying and showing the difference between some of these pronouns and really what the pronoun problems I see in your writing are. We have one more set of pronouns left, the indefinite pronouns, and we will do those next week. So if you are absent on the second session, March 20th, March 21st, March 22nd, you should be watching this screencast and the first part of it.